They're noisy, they're smelly, and we worry that they carry disease. They're also a valuable and protected native species that has lived in Australia longer than European settlement. But more and more, we find them roosting in our neighbourhoods, causing conflict in our urban communities. Council acknowledges the difficulties faced by residents living near a large roost. So in November 2013, when the Queensland State Government released guidelines and codes of practice to allow local governments to manage roosts, Council took on a lead role in roost management for the region. As a result of this new responsibility, Council has developed a regional flying fox management plan to provide clear direction for roost management across Council land.
The family have lived in Palmwoods for 45 years. Dunning Street and Lingara Avenue did not exist at that time. It was a lot of bush and farms all around. My experience with the flying fox in Palmwoods, I believe they came here around 5 or 6 years ago. Each year the numbers increased, sometimes doubling. There were thousands upon thousands of them, and the smell, the noise was constant 24 hours a day. It was quite upsetting to us physically and emotionally because it was relentless. We felt quite alone. The council would come and it was as if they were on the flying fox's side, and we felt let down. They ultimately came to the aid of us and cleared underneath the flying fox colony when the colony wasn't there, and touch wood, they haven't returned. We worry that they may just move up the creek line and come closer to us, but we're watching and being quite aware. We've been informed by council and the environment officers that the flying fox is like an area that is quite lush and green and with a lot of undergrowth. I would be essentially managing my land to keep the flying foxes at bay. It's best for us just to do it ourselves, I believe, and maybe if it became too much, then council would come to our aid. So it's just moving them on. We aren't asking them to be destroyed, we just want them relocated, and the council have done that quite successfully.
We didn't have flying foxes for a long time, so being here for 13 years, it was only in the last about 3 years that we started to notice some of them coming into the area, and that gradually built up, and it got worse and worse as time went on. You know, getting woken up at anywhere from 3:30 to 4 and that every morning, even with all the windows shut, was unbearable, and our quality of life had gone, and we thought, oh well, we'll just move, you know, they can have it. But then we realised, good luck selling. Who'd buy a house in an area that's got, you know, 6,000 to 8,000 flying foxes? When they were here in large numbers, some of the experiences that we had to deal with was not only the screeching, but it was also the stench of them, particularly in wet weather. Our health concerns at the time the flying foxes were here in large numbers was that they could be spreading the Lissa virus. We contacted the council to find out if there were any plans, or if they were aware of it even, and they were aware of it, so they'd been out here and monitoring it. But they said, unfortunately, our hands are tied because the government legislation was in place for some of these species. So we realised then that there was a long haul to overcome that. When the final go-ahead was given, we missed it. We missed our opportunity because you can only disperse them when they're not pregnant. And there's only a slight window that is around about April, May, June, maybe July that this can happen in a whole year. By the time the next window came along, everything was in place, and council had made sure that they were ready to go. We felt relieved, but nervous and concerned that it may not work. How I felt after the dispersal, all of a sudden, that the very next night we got a beautiful peaceful night's sleep, which we hadn't had for a number of years. We can have the windows open and get nice ventilation and cool air. We get woken in the morning by beautiful bird song and not screeching and the sound that we were dreading. I'd like to see council continue to monitor all the roosts, not just here but elsewhere on the coast, because they're all over the place, and where necessary undertake non-lethal dispersal action to make sure they don't roost in high urban areas.
For a person to develop Hendra, they've actually got to come in contact with the infected horse. A bat can't give them Hendra, so it has to go from the bat to the horse, from the horse to a person. So to protect yourself from Hendra, for example, is if you've got a horse, you need to have your horse vaccinated against Hendra. There's 12 different lyssaviruses in the world, and Australian bat lyssavirus is one of them. It's the only one that we've got here in Australia. And so you get it directly from an infected bat. You're not going to know if a bat's infected just by looking at it. So you have to treat all bats exactly the same. And the moral of the story is just don't touch them. So if you don't touch them, you can't get the disease. Bat urine and bat faeces have no Australian bat lyssavirus in it at all. It's not infectious. Australian bat lyssavirus doesn't stay alive very long outside the bat at all. If you come across a bat that's lying on the ground or is injured, if it's hanging in a fence, don't touch it. The most important thing is that you ring somebody who can come and help you. It's really important that the kids know not to touch. So they may find a bat on the ground and want to pick it up, or they may be concerned that it's sick. They have to know from the very beginning that they must never touch a wild animal, and that includes bats, and they should tell a grown-up about it.
I have a lot of sympathy with people who are trying to manage flying foxes, and particularly people who've got flying foxes landing in their backyard and they don't want them there. That's a real problem that we've still got to solve in an effective way. One of the problems with managing flying foxes here in Australia is that there's no manual where we can go to that will tell us how to look after a colony of flying foxes, how to move it on. Australia is one of the only developed countries where flying foxes are found. So it's our problem and we've got to learn how to solve it. In terms of intelligence, flying foxes are right up there with dogs. So they're a very smart animal, and this makes them even more difficult to manage because they learn fairly quickly. And often you think you might have fooled them, you've chased them out of an area, and you look around half an hour later and they're back again. And the other problem is, where do they go? You know, you're going to just chase them away to someone else, make it someone else's problems. They're very difficult animals to manage. This is a problem for council because if they want to move a flying fox colony, it depends on what species is there. And if it's a greyhead, they've got to get permission. Now, this is unfortunate because one of the best ways to move a flying fox colony is right when it arrives. So don't let them settle and regard this as a good place to be. Unfortunately, this doesn't often happen. And by the time flying foxes are well established and a permit's through, they don't want to leave. The other side of the coin is the positive things flying foxes do in our environment. They're a native animal. They've been here for a long, long time. They're one of the biggest bats in the world, and some of our commercial hardwoods like black butt and Moreton Bay ash and some of these big commercial timbers pollinated only by flying foxes at night. So the health of our forest is very much dependent on flying fox activity at night.
EcoSure has been assisting Council by monitoring 6 urban flying fox roosts for the past year, and that will help residents be able to see the natural movement. There was 2 or 3 months where we had no flying foxes in any of those 6 roosts. There are 2 broad types of management that you can take, and that's to either try and get the flying foxes to leave the site, or you can manage them where they are. One of the ways that you can do that is create buffers to cause the roost to be further away from the conflict area, which is often a residential area. Council also has a regional flying fox plan, and it's really important to take that strategic approach because managing at one roost will most likely impact other roosts if you're trying to get them to move on. So looking at that landscape scale approach is really important.
I consider that the Sunshine Coast is one of the leading councils to have a proper flying fox management program. It's a very sensible management program. It's very considerate to flying foxes and their role in the environment and to the problems that people face with them.
We're learning from our residents, we're learning from the experts, and we're learning from the management experiences of other councils. What we have learnt is that each roost must be managed in the way that will be most effective for that location, and with a management plan to guide these decisions.